How long have you been living in Spain?
Just over 5 years. No, 5 years. I came at the end of May in 2008 to do my Salta. Okay. I've been here ever since.
Did you come straight to Valencia?
Yeah, well, yes, because my wife lives in Valencia. At the time, my fiance. So I met her there because she had just taken her first trip to America with her boyfriend. She'd always wanted to go to America. So she had a trip where she would go to Ireland with Aer Lingus, I think, and then from Ireland to Boston, and then from Boston to New York, and she toured Ground Zero with the terrorist attacks. And this was in 2004, 2005. And then also she got to see Niagara Falls. So it was sort of a package deal. And so after she went back to Spain after taking the trip, this was September 2005, she wanted to get some American cyber friends to practice her English and just talk about America and things like that. And so I met her there. And so we were friends for a while. And of course, she had a boyfriend at the time. But eventually, her relationship with her boyfriend ended, and we got
You kept in touch.
We kept in touch, and then we just sort of got romantically involved. And then I came to Spain to visit her for the first time in 2007. And by that time, I decided that I wanted to come here to be with her and just make a life here.
So really, you came here to be with her, with your wife.
Absolutely.
Where did you grow up?
Oh, well, my father was in the Navy, so we had to move around every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I was born in the state of Virginia, where my parents now live, even though they're both Tennessee natives.
Is your father retired now?
Yes, he retired in 1985. I was 6 months old, and we moved to Japan when I was 6 months old. And then when I was about 2.5 or so, we moved to Annapolis, Maryland.
How did you feel about moving around so much? Is it something that you enjoyed, or was it unsettling?
I basically accepted it. I think at a very early age, I just understood that this is our life.
You must have made friends and then had to leave them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because my daughter had to say goodbye to a friend of hers from the nursery because the father found a job in Holland. And my wife and I were torn up about it. We were just like, oh, she has to leave one of her best friend from the nursery. But I told my wife, I said, interestingly enough, I feel bad for my daughter. But I myself as a child just accepted that was, I don't ever remember crying because I had to leave a friend. I mean, I think I accepted it. I didn't like it. But I just accepted it. And I stayed in touch with some of my friends back in the old days with actually written letters. And then now I'm in contact with a lot of them through Facebook. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dave, how many languages do you speak?
The only foreign language I can really speak well is Spanish.
But you're interested in languages as your hobby?
Yes, I will say that there are some languages that I have a very basic knowledge that I could speak, just the basic, just to get along, and that would be here in Valencia, Valencian, Catalan. I know just the basics, to get along. French as well, in the airport in Paris, for example, and also Italian. I could get along. Other than that, there are several languages that I'm very familiar with, at least in the written form. And that would be German, Portuguese, even Basque and Occitan. And
have you always been interested in languages?
Ever since my university days, yeah. As a teenager, not particularly.
What advice would you give to Spanish speakers trying to learn English?
Okay, yeah. I would say... first of all, to be realistic, and realistic in the sense that you cannot learn a language overnight. It's a commitment, particularly a language like English.
So these courses that advertise learn English in 30 days, forget it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is this: there are some immersion programs, and some of them can be very helpful if they're good quality. And I would never say I would never say don't do an immersion program. If you have the opportunity, do it. If it's good quality, but people shouldn't have the idea that in a year I can be fluent in English. You know, it's a long-term commitment. The other thing I would say is if you're going to pay for classes, if you have the money, pay for the best. Because it's like the saying goes, you get what you pay for. And I would recommend classes with places that have a reputation for high standards and for getting results. For example, the British Council is such a place. Mm-hmm. And now, if a person doesn't have the money, then just do some investigating and try to find places that people know and, you know, have a good reputation. But obviously, I would say if you have the money, buy the best. The other thing is you practice all the ways possible. And with TV, movies, music, reading native materials, novels, etc. And the most important is practicing with speaking with native speakers.
Of course. That goes without saying. So you've been here for 5 years, you said?
Yes.
What's been the most difficult thing for you about making a life here?
Mainly, I would say economically. I haven't been able to make the money that I made in the U.S. because I was a Spanish teacher in what we call the public school system, which is basically a state school or comprehensive school in the UK.
That's a full-time teaching job.
Full-time teaching job, and of course here in Spain, they would consider me to have been a civil servant because you're working for the government. Even though in my case it was the government of North Carolina, the state of North Carolina. But the pay is obviously much better than what you get in typical language academies.
Sure.
So that's been an adjustment.
And you've done a bit of teaching, but you self-publish books on Amazon. How many do you have for sale now on Amazon?
I would say...
You've lost count.
I've lost count, yes. Because when you have the list, they will list up to 100.
I saw 66 before. Is that accurate?
Oh, did you count my books?
I put your name in Amazon.s.
Okay.
And I came up 66 results.
Okay, well that's probably very accurate because I was going to estimate. I was going to say I probably have published between 60 and 70. So that's.
And the majority seem to be language books.
Yes. The overwhelming majority learning foreign languages, and then there are a few that are other things. But
and which books would you recommend for Spanish speakers who are learning English?
Okay, to start with, just for a basic knowledge of English, I have two books. One is Simple English for You, which I would call it international English. In other words, it's basically American English. But I point out if there are grammatical differences between American English and British English, I point them out. And I also mention differences in vocabulary. So that book is the most well-rounded book.
Is that the beginner level?
It goes from beginner, yes. It goes from beginner up until intermediate, upper intermediate, advanced. It's really appropriate for all levels, but it's ideal for beginners who just want to start from zero.
And is it only in English, or is there support in Spanish for people who have no idea of English?
Most of my books are bilingual, so they give you, for example, in the vocabulary, you'll have the English word, and then they'll have the definition or the equivalent in that language, in their native language, and then the grammatical explanations are done in the native language. So I have the basic book, Simple English for You, and then I decided to publish a book, Simple British English, where, now the reason for that was, the history of that, is I was doing private classes, and I had people that said, I'm not interested in American English, I only want British English. So I had the idea to use for my classes, I would have a book, and I would just use, if there were differences in vocabulary, I would just put the British terminology.
Were they classes in the States or here?
Here, private classes. And that was the idea for the book, is to use it with my private classes if I had students who said, I only want British English. So you won't be confused with how they say it in America and that kind of thing. But then I thought, well, I'll just make that available for people. So those are the two basic books. Then I have another book that is very helpful, which is called, in Spanish it's called El Inglés Correcto e Informal, correct and proper and informal English. And that has a lot of phrasal verbs and also idioms.
The phrasal verbs are a big problem for Spanish speakers.
And it is bilingual.
What do you do when you're not working, in your spare time?
Well, so nowadays it seems like if I'm not working at a regular job or doing my Kindle books, I'm with the daughter and the family. So I don't seem like I have a lot of spare time nowadays.
How old's your daughter?
She's 2.5. Yeah. What I like to do in my spare time, I like to read a lot. I read a lot of things on the internet. I like to read about history, about famous people, biographies, and things like that. I also like to listen to music. Mainly, I prefer rock music. I listen to my iPod or YouTube videos, whatever. You know.
Can you talk a bit about what you hope to do in the future? Do you see yourself permanently staying in Valencia, or looking ahead, you think you might be traveling somewhere else?
Basically, I've had the idea that likely I'll stay in Spain for the rest of my life, unless something comes up with a job or something like that. But my wife has roots here. She's from Valencia. All of her family.
She has family here.
Yes, and so unless something comes up that has to do with a job for either for her or for me, I basically would like to try to make my life here, if possible, or at least in Spain. I don't really anticipate leaving Spain, but who knows?
The Quickfire Hot Seat.
Dave, what makes you happy?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. I thought about that. My daughter's smile. Strawberry ice cream. And the smell of cooking French fries outdoors. Like if you're at the fun fair, the ballpark, and then other things as well.
And what makes you sad?
Well, something that makes me sad is losing touch with the past. And sometimes that could be losing people, friends and loved ones, or even famous people. For example, the other day I felt sad because I was playing with my daughter and she gave me the great smile and I just felt great. And I thought about the American singer John Denver, because I remember reading about him, and he said that he just loved his kids, and he said the best thing that I could ever say about myself is that I was somebody's dad. And I always remembered that. And every time I play with my daughter, I think about that. And I was thinking about John Denver, and then it occurred to me, he's not with us anymore, And I felt sad, but that's an example. But it's not just people. It's like, for example, imagine back in the neighborhood where you grew up, in East London, right? Yeah. And think about the sweet shop that you used to always go to when you were a kid. You have those great memories. You go back to the old neighborhood, and it's not there. They've turned it into a car park, or
Which famous person, dead or alive, would you most like to have a beer with or have dinner with?
I would definitely like to sit down and have a beer or dinner with Nelson Mandela. The thing is, ever since reading his autobiography, which is called Long Road to Freedom, mm-hmm. I just have had a lot of respect for him. I mean, he was in prison for 25 years. And I think a lot of people, including myself, and after 25 years, if you don't go insane, you become bitter and angry and this and that. But no, he comes out of prison positive, wants to move the country forward, and I admire him for that.
Me too. If you could change something about yourself, what would you change?
All right. I've got it right here. This is the smoking gun. This is from my first grade teacher. I was about 6 or 7 years old. And she made a comment at the bottom that you can read.
Shall I read it?
Yes, you can read it.
Good potential.
Okay.
Needs to relax. Rich in background. Good recall. Well accepted by others. Shows much improvement. Which part of that do you think needs improving?
Well, out of those, which do you think sounds like something that
needs to relax?
Needs to relax, yeah. And I mean, I've been dealing with that ever since. It's just an ongoing.
Does that explain your interest in Buddhism?
Yes.
Have you tried meditation?
Not officially. I've never taken classes, but I'm more into. I have meditated, but I wouldn't say like the way people do it. You know, it's more thinking deeply about issues in philosophy and trying to make sense of life. But anyway, that's an ongoing issue, and I mean, it started when I was
7 years old.
6 years old, you know, and ever since.
Just still dealing with it.
But yeah, I think, and the thing is with that as well is I'm a worrier. You know, I worry about things, and you know, worry is good up to a certain point. You need to worry about certain things, but after a certain point, it's counterproductive.
What's the point? If you had €6,000 to spend on yourself, what would you buy?
Yeah, I would buy a new computer to start with, because my computer, you know, with my desktop publishing and everything is very important.
Do you work on a PC or a Mac?
It's a PC, laptop. But anyway, I'd probably want to get a better computer with more options or whatever. I would probably buy a lot of books.
As an author for the Kindle, do you tend to read on the Kindle, on an iPad, or do you read paper books?
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't.
Just occurred to me.
I'm going to confess all of.
I love the smell of a new book.
Yeah, oh, I do too. Yeah, no, I like paper books. No, as strange as it may seem, Craig, because I've told people too. People ask me as well. You know, have you ever been to England? You know, it's like, no. You know, I'm an English teacher who hasn't been to England. I mean, that's like a. I say it's like a Muslim who hasn't been to Mecca, right? And I'm ashamed of that. But no. The thing is, I do want to go to England when I can. And that's something I definitely want to do. I've got friends in London as well. But strange as it may seem, I don't have a Kindle reader. I know that's really quite bizarre considering that I publish, but I just have never got around to buying one. So I'd buy a Kindle reader to start with. But I would buy, so I'd buy a lot of Kindle books and maybe some paperback books as well. And I would buy a lot of music for my iPod.
So to wrap up, apart from going to Amazon or Amazon.s to look for your books, what would they search for? David Luton?
Okay, yeah. The books for English speakers are usually listed under David S. Luton. And then the ones that are for non-English speakers are usually listed under David Spencer Luton.
Okay.
And then the ones that are under Dave Luton are usually other books, including the one on British English for Americans.
Okay, so that's the main place where people can find your work.
Is on Amazon, yeah.
Great, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks
Great.
for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I love your wife's cookies. They're awesome. And after 25 years, you know, if you don't go insane, you become bitter. But strange as it may seem, I don't have a Kindle reader. I know that's really quite bizarre considering that I publish, but I just if you have the money, pay for the best. Because it's like the saying goes, you get what you pay for.